Hello, welcome to session 1 of the St. John's University Parish Choral Intensive. So, we're going to start off not necessarily with our do, re, mi's, but with the basics of music theory. So, we're going to first start off with learning about staffs, clefs, and ledger lines. So I just want to make sure that we all can see. Can you see clearly? Let's move that up a bit. There we go. All right. So you can see, am I taking up the focus? Whatever. Okay. So the staff is what we draw our notes on. So every staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. And those 5 lines and 4 spaces represent the white keys on the piano. So here we have 2 staffs. Do this nifty little. Now it's a grand staff. It's joined together, and it's joined together first and foremost by middle C, this little bob right here. So now, not only by this thing here, but by middle C are these 2 staffs joined and created a grand staff. So what else makes a staff? Well, a clef. And clefs not only identify what type of staff you're in, but what register you're in. So, here we have a treble clef, or a G clef. The reason why it's called a G clef is because, see this little swirly thing right here? Well, brings into focus where the G is. Swirly thing swirls right on the second line in the staff, and we know that the second line represents a G because of the G clef. Well, what about this bottom staff here? Well, this is the bass clef, also known as the F clef. The F clef kind of looks like an F. See here? Boop, boop, shoo, boop, boop. And it tells us where the F is, because right in between like the 2 forks of the F, I'll draw it again, in between the 2 forks is right there, and it's the second line from the top. That's how we know where various notes are on lines and spaces, thanks to these clefs. Now, looking at this, we see there are 4 spaces and 5 lines, but what do we do when we have a note that is either higher than this top line on the treble clef, lower than this E line on the treble clef, or higher than this A line on the bass clef, or lower than this G line on the bass clef? What do? How do we denote a note that is either higher or lower than what the staff can show us? Well, this is when we get into cute little ledger lines. So, as you can see, C, middle C, floats right in the middle because of this invisible line that goes in between the staffs. And so we have to write the circle, essentially, or draw the circle, and then so that we know it's not a floaty B, just kind of floating above here, or a floaty D, just kind of sinking below here. Boom. Because of this ledger line, we know it is a C. You see? Anyway, so I'm gonna That's an A. By golly, that's an E. You know, so we have these ledger lines to help us interpret what is going on, either above or below the staffs. All right. So that's the first little nugget. Now we're going to move on to note duration. All right, so now talking about note duration. So note duration is the length of time a note is played. For example, up here we have the whole note, and the whole note has the longest duration no matter what meter you're working with. The whole note, it just looks like a circle. That's how you know that that is the longest, the note with the longest duration. In any meter, anything that you see, there it is. So we're going to put big ol' 1 right there. So note duration and breaking up beats, you just got to remember your fractions, you know? So here we have the whole note is 1, an entire value of 1. Well, now we're going to break the whole note into 2. Now, it's a half note. And you see here, it's a circle, a big blob, but now it has a stem on it. That's how we know that whatever this is, it's half of a whole note. Well, now a half note gets broken into quarter notes. See? And you can see now that the blob that's been filled in is not what looks to be empty. It's now filled in, has a stem. That's how you know it's a quarter note. Well, now we're going to break the quarter notes up. So you go from a quarter to a eighth. Now you see here the eighth notes. Yeah, they're filled in like the quarter note. They have a stem like the quarter note, but now they have a little flag right there. That's how you know it's an eighth note, if it has a flag on it, little on the stem. Well, now we're going to break up the eighth note. What does an eighth note turn into once it's broken up in half? A 16th note. Sweet. See, this is just simple fraction mathematics. Think about a 16th note that looks just like an eighth note, except it has 2 flags. All right, so now let's talk about measures and time signatures. So the way we make measures on a staff is through bar lines. So a bar line, you've probably seen it before. Let's just take this staff right here on top and cut it in half, just whoop. We'll see now, I've got 2 measures. Let's do the same down here. Boom. Another 2 measures. How nice. That's basically how you make measures, just with bar lines. So now let's move on to, let's see, time signatures. So, what is a time signature, and what does it do? Well, time signature, and you've probably seen it before, you've got like your 4 4s, and your 3 4s, and your 6 8s, and your 3 2s. Those are some of the common time signatures. But what does it all mean? Well, whatever number is on top of the time signature denotes the amount of beats in a measure. The bottom number denotes the type of note that has the beat. So let's look at our examples. 4 4 time, I'm going to write it right over here. 4 4 time contains 4 beats, and the quarter note has the beat. Well, what does that look like? Well, 4, beats in the measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and yes, I know I'm being very sloppy, my apologies. And the quarter note gets the beat, so I'm going to draw my stem. 2, 3, 4. Ta-da! 4, 4. Well, let's look at 3, 4. 3 on top because it's 3 beats in a measure. 4 on the bottom to show that the quarter note has the beat. So 3, 1, 2, 3. And they're quarter notes, so put my stem up there. 3, 4 time. But let's get a little wild. Let's get a little wild. Let's do 6, 8 time. Also, I think I just realized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I accidentally extended the staff. Oopsie daisy. So me vibes. Okay, that's better. All right, so 6, 8. 6, 8, 6 on top. Because there's 6 beats in the measure, 8 on the bottom, because what type of note has the beat? The 8th note. I feel like Dora the Explorer. Okay, so let's draw a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we're gonna get into this a little later about duple, simple, time, compound, but we're not gonna worry about that just yet. Hold on one second. Let's see. We're gonna first draw some stems. Then we're gonna group it. And I remember when I was saying how like 8th notes are like, whoop, and then they got a flag. Can you see that? I hope you can. Well, anyway, so you have these quarter notes. They're not connected. If they were connected, that would make them like 8th notes. But this line connecting it all together, that represents the flag. Just so you know. We'll get into that later. So just hang on tight there, okay? Next, let me erase that. Okay. Next, let's look at 3/2 time. A lot of older music uses 3/2 time. It's not too common to see anymore. Don't ask me why, please. But anyway, 3/2 time. There are 3 beats in a measure. And what type of note has the beat? A half note. It's got 2 on the bottom. So you're going to see that the half note has the beat. So 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. Put a stem on them. There you go. 3/2 time signature. So basically, yeah, just remember, whatever time signature you're looking at, even if it's something like really crazy, like 12/16, if it's 12/16, that means that there are 12 beats in the measure, and that the 16th note has the beat. 7/8 time, there are 7 beats in the measure, and the 8th note has the beat. That's all really you have to remember when looking at a time signature. Amount of beats in the measure goes on top, the type of note that has the beat goes on the bottom. I hope that clears some stuff up. So now we're going to talk about rest duration. So rests represent periods of silence in a measure. And each type of rest shares a duration with a certain type of note. For example, a quarter rest takes up the same duration in a measure as a quarter note. Same goes for anything. Any type of rest, it'll have its equivalent in a note. So, an example, let's start at the top of the chart. A whole rest, this bad boy right here, occupies the same amount of time as a whole note, and it looks like a box descending from the 4th staff line. It'll always look like that, and it'll take up the whole measure as a result. So yeah, it looks like a box descending. Well, what's 1? So now, it breaks in half. We gotta remember our fractions here. Breaks into half rests. And a half rest, occupying the same amount of time as a half note, it looks like a hat on the middle staff line. See, little hat, very fancy. Well, a half note breaks into a quarter note, and looks like a squiggle. Now in my early music theory classes, when we had to write stuff out, I'd always get very poor marks for how my quarter rests looked, because they're squiggles, but they have to be a very specific type of squiggle. They can't just be. So if you're writing out a quarter rest, write it the right way. Well, a quarter rest breaks into an eighth rest. And remember how quarter notes, they started to get flags? The more you broke them apart, they had flags on their stems. Well, similar to that, you have you drum kind of like a dot and then the stem of the rest. And I know that looks really yucky. Well, that's what it looks like. And then breaking it further, an eighth goes into a 16th rest. And you just kind of keep, I have to write that better. Otherwise, I'm going to go nuts. Here we go. So, an eighth rest, you add another thing to make it a 16th. And you just keep going. You want a 30-second rest? I have to draw that better. Yeesh Louise. That's better. See? Even more. Just keep adding them, adding them, and adding them. Of course, it's super rare to see rests like that because it's like, what's the point? It's harder to count. So, yeah. There's the chart. All right, so now we're going to talk about augmentation dots and ties. So, starting off with augmentation dots. Augmentation dots add a half to a note's duration. So, for example, here we have a quarter note, and a quarter note is broken into eighth notes. 2 eighth notes equal 1 quarter note. Well, we add an augmentation dot to a quarter note, it becomes a dotted quarter note. We still have the 2 eighth notes, but now we've added on, because of the dot, another eighth note. So, a dotted quarter note equals 3 eighth notes. So let's look at how to apply that in measures. So let's talk about time signatures again really quick. So with whatever time signature you have, the top note defines the amount of beats in the measure. The bottom number refers to the type of notes with each beat. So 4/4, there are 4 beats in a measure, and each beat is represented by a quarter note. So here we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, we still have some of the measure to fill in. since each quarter note is broken into 2 eighth notes, we can even kind of imagine 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the augmented quarter note leaves space in the measure to be represented by a eighth note. So, moving on to 3/4, 3 beats in a measure denoted by the quarter note. So, right off the bat, we have a dotted quarter note, so that's 1 and 2, and here we have, in the last beat of the measure, a quarter note, so we know that this will be 3. 1 and 2, 3. So, what type of note head will this be? It'll be an eighth note. We can assume that that's 3. So, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's what it is. The augmented dot, it extends the note head by 1/2. So now let's talk about ties. What ties do are they merge multiple notes across the same pitch and let the duration of a note travel across barriers. And barriers can be a beat, a measure line, or a staff. So, let's see. So we got 6/8 time. Remember 6/8, 6 beats in a measure, and the beat is denoted by an eighth note. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, but you see here, we've got a tie. That's 3 and 4. So, go. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. We've extended the third beat across into the fourth beat. Then we have 5 and 6 at the end. So one more time. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. And in order for this to truly work, it has to be the same pitch. It can't be 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. No. Otherwise, that's a slur. And not a bad kind of slur. A slur across notes, which we're not going to be talking about. There are different kinds of slurs, as we know in our society. Anyway, moving on to 3/2. 3 beats per measure. The half note has the beat. So, 1, 2, 3. Oh, but now see, we've moved staffs. We're at the staff below. So this line connects the staffs. So we know, okay, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to the next staff line, and I can tell from this tie that I'm going to be staying on the same pitch as I go below. I don't have to adjust my brain. I just have to keep staying on pitch for the rest of the duration. And we see here, we've got a dotted whole note, which will fill the entirety of this measure. So, it'll be 1, 2, 3. So, 1, 2, 3, off. One more time. 1, 2, 3, off. So yeah, augmented dots, just to say again, increase a note's duration by 1/2, and ties merge multiple beats across the same pitch and let the duration of that note to travel across barriers, such as a beat, a measure line, and a staff. All right, so now let's talk about steps and accidentals. A half step, or a semitone, is the distance from one key on the keyboard to the next adjacent key. For example, C to C sharp. It's not always from like a white key to a black key. Sometimes it's like E to F, white keys. Nevertheless, a half step is just the distance from one key on the keyboard to the next adjacent key, whatever that might be. A whole note, a whole step or a whole tone is the same as two half steps. From three keys on the keyboard. So 1, 2 is a half step. 1, 2, 3 is a whole step. And that looks like C sharp to D sharp or G to A. So I want you to hear it. Here's C sharp, D natural, D sharp, G to A, G natural, G sharp, that's a half step. That's a whole step. So, now talking about accidentals. An accidental denotes whether a pitch of a note is lowered, flat, or raised, sharp, by a half step. For example, the black key between C and D could be called C sharp or D flat depending on context. So let's look at that. C sharp or D flat, depending on the harmonic context. See here? This is the same thing, the exact same pitch frequency. C sharp, D flat. And this is called enharmonic spelling, when it can be either, like for example, C sharp or D flat. And again, it just depends on harmonic context. So another popular example of this is E and F. E and F. E could be called F flat, and F could be called E sharp.